I think Lasal, you can start.
All right. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Right. So, good evening and welcome you all to yet another episode of the GYBN Sri Lanka Monthly Talks. I think we are meeting after a short while. So, anyway, I'm so glad to be with you all once again with another exciting episode of our GYBN Sri Lanka Monthly Talks. So, before moving on today's lecture, as we are meeting after a short while, I think it would be really good if we can go over and introduce ourselves to GYBN, as I can see some new faces among our participants today. So I'll quickly give you an introduction onto what is GYBN, or the Global Youth Biodiversity Network. So, Global Youth Biodiversity Network was founded in 2010, and it is a global network or coalition of young people and also youth organizations who are working with a common motivation and a purpose to transform and transit into a society that is living in harmony with nature. So, since 2012, GYBN has been officially recognized as the international coordination platform for the youth participation in the negotiations under the Convention on Biological Diversity. So you can say we are the global youth voices for biodiversity. Yeah, as I said, GYBN is a global network. So at the moment, we are connected with more than 640 youth organizations spanned across more than 170 countries and representing nearly 1.25 million youth. And we have 50 plus national chapters and 4 regional chapters with more than 550 member organizations and running some exciting projects all over the world. So I won't take much longer, as I am pretty sure that all of you are anticipating a very exciting talk from us today. So I'll move on to our speaker today. So we have Mr. Lenin de Silva. So he's a marine biologist with a bachelor's honors degree in fisheries and marine sciences from the Ocean University of Sri Lanka. And at the moment, he's pursuing a PhD at the Center for Sustainable Ecosystems, Harry Butler Institute at the Murdoch University, Australia. And Lenin is a passionate individual when it comes to marine conservation and biodiversity, with a very strong record on research, education, and outreach in the fields of marine taxonomy, parasitology, marine herpetology and ichthyology, and also sustainable use of marine resources. And Lenin is actively engaged in a number of national and international conservation organizations in the field of marine biology. And also presently he's serving as an advisor to the Marine Environment Conservation Society in Sri Lanka. And he's also the co-founder of Voice for Climate Change Sri Lanka and a honorary director of Alliance for Aquatic Research and Conservation. So without further ado, I would like to invite Ms. Lenin to take us on today's lecture, focusing on the conservation of marine snakes. Right. Okay. So Lenin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lasal. So every time when it comes to online presentations, webinars, talks, I'm very bad at like presenting things. So you have to help me with sharing my screen and stuff, right?
Yeah, sure. You can share now. Yeah.
Yep. With my internet connection, it's gonna be very, very bad, I would say. All right. Can you all see my screen?
Yes. Yeah, it's still loading. And yeah, now it's okay. Yeah.
Great. All right, guys. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm honored to be here with you all today. And thank you everyone for sacrificing your Sunday fun day for a boring talk like this. So let's try to make it more happening and insightful, right? So let's make this a more interesting by like asking questions, talking, and like a very we'll make it in very active way, right? So guys, so I'm Lenin de Silva, as Lasal introduced. I did my bachelor's in Ocean University, and after that I joined University of Peradeniya veterinary faculty. There I started my Master of Philosophy degree. So for that I started working on marine snakes. There I thought of doing a bit of a novel thing by doing post-mortem examinations. So the things that you all are gonna see today is mainly from that research, right? So before everything, I want to tell, like, every time when there's a public awareness session or some sort of a knowledge sharing session, I used to say, if someone feels like they are more competent, more fluent in any other language other than English, please do reach in your most fluent language, because the purpose of these kind of activities is to share the knowledge. So if you feel like you want any explanation in Sinhala, just please let us know. If it is in Tamil, I'm pretty sure Lasal can find someone who can translate, because unfortunately I can't talk in Tamil, right? So okay, guys, right, I'm gonna okay, right, the slide moved, right, Lasal?
Yes. I think
Great, okay.
there's a little lag, but
Lag.
that's fine. Yeah, that will
Yeah.
work.
Okay, I'll keep that in my mind. And Lasal, do disturb me and let me know if anything goes wrong, right?
Sure. Okay.
Okay, great. So today's plan, we are gonna do a bit of an introduction on marine snakes, and gonna talk about the biology a bit, and we are gonna jump to their post-mortem activities, and gonna talk about threats. And as per the topic for today, we are gonna talk about threats and conservation importance. And then the most important part, the discussion, where we are gonna discuss on what you all got, what you all want to know, and what are the things that we can do in order to protect these creatures, right? So, okay, now there's a bit of a warning, right? So every time when I try to present things in a public or a common platform, I forget this. But this time I made sure, like, I'm gonna put up this slide, because usually our audience is like science nerds, or like within the faculties or the institutions, who with the people who engage in these kind of activities. But yes, when it comes to general public, we have to consider these things as well. So what's about to what you're gonna see is about like a lot of blood and some other bit of a gross things. So if you are a bit sensitive, so viewer discretion is advised, but nothing but a lot of interesting things. So I would recommend and suggest you all to stay, but if you feel like it's not going to work, feel free to discreet, right? So, all right, okay, right. So the term marine snakes is a bit controversial, right? So marine snakes is a collective term, right? But most of the time, people used to use the word sea snakes or sea kraits. In Sinhala, Muhudu Naya and Muhudu Karavala or Samudra Sarpaya. But Samudra Sarpaya or marine snakes is a term that we don't use quite often. That's why I wanted to make sure the flyer you all include marine snakes instead of sea snakes, right? So what's the difference? So as I said, marine snakes is a collective term. Inside the marine snakes, we have all sea snakes, sea kraits, and other whatever the snakes that are living in marine environment, right? So usually what I used to say is like every marine snake is a sea snake, but not every sea snake is a marine snake, right? So for example, the first image, right? So that's Acrophodus granulatus, that's a marine snakes, right? So the one with the blue color body that's on the rock, you all can see my cursor, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So this one is a sea crate, and this one is a sea snake. This one is a sea snake. This one is another marine snake. So usually marine snakes, let me check one more slide. All right, okay. Right. Usually marine, the best way to remember things is sea snakes, they are living in the marine environment or in the sea for the rest of their life. They're not going to they are not returning back to the land. But when it comes to marine snakes, they do return time to time. And when it comes to sea kraits, they also return to the land. So only sea snakes, they are gonna live in the marine environment or in the sea for they feed, they breed, they do everything in the ocean. They're not going to return to the land, and they are very, very bad at locomoting in the terrestrial environments, right? But when it comes to sea kraits and other marine snakes, especially sea kraits, they do return to land to feed, to breed, and to do other things, other activities, right? And marine snakes, they return to the land time to time. So that's the difference, but we are going to elaborate this in the coming up slides, right? So this is the global distribution. They live in tropical and subtropical waters across Pacific and Indian Oceans. So the blue color patch, that's the place where you can find all these marine snakes. And I'm not going to go deep when it about the taxonomy and other things. This is the general information. So we do have all these marine snakes in all these subtropical and tropical waters, but not in the very deep waters where there is no any reefs or like vast majority of open ocean is there. We don't find them, but there are records of some species like Hydrophis platurus, that is a yellow-bellied sea snake. But as I said, like it's a controversial thing. Some say they are like drifting, some say they are expanding their territories, and some say they have been there. We haven't seen them, but due to lack of research or anything like that. But anyhow, where we can find sea snakes, marine snakes are between tropical and subtropical waters across the world, right? So since our discussion is going to happen about the marine snakes of Sri Lanka, or like the conservation efforts and stuff like that, so I'm going to narrow it down to Sri Lankan context, right? So currently we have like 18 species where we call them as like 18 marine snakes and 15 sea snakes, like 15 true sea snakes and 3 other marine snakes, right? The earlier researchers like P. Dharaniyagala and Anselm de Silva and some other researchers, as well as like current researchers like Mendis Wickramasinghe, Dr. Kanish Kukwela, they all did amazing work, and they managed to conclude the species list. And they earlier we considered Laticuda colubrina, or like we used to say like there's a sea crate in our list, but with the recent finding, with recent research activities, now we have concluded that we don't have any crates in Sri Lanka, but only 15 true sea snakes and 3 other marine snakes, right? So this is the checklist. So I'm not gonna tell every bit about the species, how we are going to identify like that, but because this is not about like taxonomy or like species identification guide and stuff like that. This is about the conservation, right? But if you're feeling like you want to know more, we'll discuss in the discussion session, right? So, right. So these are some, okay, right. So these are some marine snakes that our research team encountered during the research across the island. So you can see the color pattern is very different. They are like bit what do you call, like unusual to the serpent thing that we are expecting from terrestrial species, right? So that's the importance, right? Because if they are going to live in an environment which is highly dynamic, which is highly challenging, they should possess some extraordinary adaptations to overcome the challenges that they're going to experience, right? Lasal, are you with me? Oh, all right, you're there. Great. Okay, so when it comes to adaptations of these marine snakes, sea snakes, they do have some special adaptations, but altogether marine snakes, they all possess certain type of adaptations, more or less, right? So first thing, sea snakes, they have a paddle-like flattened tail to support in swimming and diving, right? I'm going to add, right. And these marine snakes, they have upward position nostrils, and they have closable valves where they can close it while diving, right? And also these marine snakes, they do have scale sensilla as a way of getting impulses or getting signals from the environment that they live. So like we all know, like fishes, they have this lateral line to sense the environment. As like that, these snakes, you can see here in every small scale, they have like a tiny projection, right? A lot of blister like things all around the scales. So they are known as scale sensilla, where they can sense what's happening in their environment, right? So this is a Hydrophis spiralis. You can see the closed valves, but if it's gonna breathe, it's gonna open, and it's gonna breathe, and he's gonna like close it whenever he wants, right? In like that way, they can manage their air intake. And also they have keels. They have like different purposes. They do aid in sensing the environment, as well as they do aid in deep dives as well, right? And also when it comes to mating, they as all other snakes, they don't have any limbs, but while they are mating in the open ocean, they might drift away. So researchers have found that male marine snakes, they do have like rough keels when compared to females, where they can hold the female to facilitate a successful copulation, right? So these are some adaptations, as well as these true sea snakes, including sea kraits. They have venom, right? They have developed venom glands, and they have fangs where they can inject lethal cocktails of venom. But when it comes to envenomations, it's really low. For example, although these laticudas or these sea kraits, they have highly toxic venoms, there are no any records of deaths around the world, right? That's because like they are very calm when it comes to people. When it comes to other non-prey materials, they are very calm. So envenomations around Sri Lanka is also very low. That's why we don't have any antivenom at the moment, because antivenom is a thing that's demand-based thing, right? And we are the officials, they produce antivenom if there's a demand for that specific envenomation. Since we don't have considerable amount of sea snake bites, so currently we don't have any antivenom, right? Which is a risk and which is a good thing, right? So, and when it comes to species identification, we can use all these features. For example, the color patterns, the number of keels, and the morphology of their head or the lip. For example, the one over here is a hook. Is the hook-nosed sea snake, that is Hydrosis, Valakkadiya in Sinhala. So hook-nosed means they have a hook-like scale on their front. So we can use these features for the identification, as well as we can use their teeth structures to aid in species identification, right? So Hydrophyschistoses, they have like 4 teeth, maxillary teeth, right behind the venom fang, right? So like that, we can aid these features in species identification as well, right? And all right, and when it comes to marine snakes, and the previous one, it's like all about sea snakes, right? These are the special adaptations these sea snakes have, and if you come across with a marine snake, the easiest way to identify is I would say, like, number one thing is their tail, right? Because all true sea snakes, they have paddle-like flattened tail, but when it comes to marine snakes, they don't have very flat tail. But Acrophotus granulatus, which is Redinaya madapanua in Sinhala, or wart snake in English, they have bit of a paddle flattened tail, but it's not very much paddled or flattened when we compare it with this true sea snakes, right? So this image is not mine, but these are my images. So these are this one is Acrophotus granulatus, this one is Cerebrus ranchus, and this one is Enhydris enhydris. So these snakes, they do possess special adaptations, but not as much as the true sea snakes does, right? So, but also they all have these upward position nostrils. They can dive. They have keels. They can sense. Everything is there, and the most exciting thing is, like, they can come to the land and they can freely locomote, unlike the hydrofish genus species like the true sea snakes, right? Okay. So when it comes to the special adaptations, something that I would like to talk is about the reproduction, right? So they do internal fertilization as other snakes, as other terrestrial snakes, and these sea snakes or these marine snakes can be viviparous, oviparous, or ovoviviparous, right? So this viviparous term viviparous is controversial, right? So we are viviparous because we develop within our mother's womb. Our mother, they nourish us. Our mothers, they nourish us, and we totally depend upon the nutrition from our parents, right? From our mother. But sea snakes, in most of the papers or in most of research articles, researchers have mentioned that sea snakes are viviparous, right? But when it comes to the real biology, they are not viviparous. We have to consider them as ovoviviparous. That means they do keep their young inside their wombs, inside the body, but they are not giving any nourishment. They are just helping them to develop with the help of the yolk, right? So oviparous means like the birds, or like the normal chicken that we know. They are laying eggs, right? So they don't do any feeding or anything. They just facilitate the egg to hatch, right? This is what the sea snakes are also doing, right? But the difference is they are keeping it inside their bodies rather than just laying it out, right? But sea crates, they do lay eggs in when they come to the land, inside the sand or in crevices or like tree trunks. There are records where they have been laying eggs. So that's another different when it comes to sea crates and sea snakes. Sea snakes, they give birth to young. They are ovoviviparous, but sea crates, they come to the land and they lay eggs and they just live without any parental care, like Bungarus phylonicus or any other rock python or any Naja species, any other terrestrial species. They come to the land, they just lay the egg and they just leave, right? But when it comes to sea snakes, they keep the eggs inside, allow the eggs to develop, and they lay the young, right? So the first image is a hemipenis. We call the pineal structures as hemipenis because they have two structures together, like in this last image. So when it comes to species identification, we can use the structure or the shape of the hemipenis in order to identify the species as well. For example, this is a hemipenis of a Hydrophis ornatus where they have like very fine spicules all around the hemipenis, right? And when it comes to Hydrophis schistosus, they have tiny spicules, but only around the top. When it comes to Hydrophis spiralis, they don't have any spicules. They have just flat, and the shape is different. When it comes to Acrococcus granulatus, the shape is different. So we can use these features to identify these sea snake species, right? So these are some images from our postmortem examination. So you can see they do have testicles, right? So these are like flaccid testicle. We are a male who's in an active reproductive stage, and we have another male who's in a non breeding stage where the testicle is not flaccid, it's like sunken down, right? So these are things that we have been observing, and I'm going to take you to the next slides where I'm going to show how we decided and we thought of like things about conservation when it comes to these interesting and less studied creatures, right? So yeah, these are some images from our post-mortem examinations where we found dead marine snakes. What we did was like we collected them, we brought them to the faculty, and we did the post-mortem examination. You can see the female was gravid, and there are eggs. The youngs are developing, and in the last image you can see the fully developed youngs. The 3 youngs are there, but unfortunately the female died, right? So this is the part we thought like, okay, this is not gonna work when it comes to sea snake populations, because we collected all these specimens, which resulted as a bycatch in fishing activities around Sri Lanka, right? So this is another egg clutch that we dissected from a I can't remember the species, probably Cerebrus tranchips, Cerebrus tranchips. So yeah, so they are also ovoviviparous. They allow these young to grow inside and they give birth, right? So it's like they start here and the youngs develop and they just give birth, right? So this is what's happening, and this is the reproduction that's happening inside, right? And so what we did was like we collected all these specimens and we wanted to find out what's happening. So we stepwise we just incised we dissected them. We like tried to find the cause for their mortalities, right? And we came across differences when it comes to males, females, and species-wide differences. For example, you can see here, usually the sea snakes, they do possess like dorsoventrally, they do possess flat bodies as well. That's because of they do have a very elongated neural arch, right? When it comes to terrestrial snakes, they don't have like that's out of I'm going too technical. I feel like that, so I'm not gonna talk about that. But we were observing all these differences, and we were comparing all these things with other species, and that was the main idea that I wanted to give, right? So yes, this is here you can see a structure which is attached to the skin of this snake. That is the lung, right? This is another unique adaptation of these sea snakes, and also most of the marine snakes, where they have a elongated single lung. The terrestrial species, they do have two lungs. One is like a reduced one is a bit elongated one. But when it comes to sea snakes or marine snakes, they have a very long, very elongated lung, right? So this is very interesting. So this is the gut. You can see the tracheal area, the intestine, stomach, and the rectum, anus area, and all these other things. And this is the lung, right? You can see, you can observe this gut. It's like the same length, right? The lung, it's a single, very long one, right? So this is the inside anatomy of a lung. So you can see there are like three areas, succular area, tracheal area, and bronchial area, right? So here you can see the tracheal lung. The idea of this tracheal lung is to store or like collect oxygen. And when it comes to bronchial lung, the purpose of having vascularized anatomy is to absorb as much as oxygen. And when it comes to succular lung, the idea is to act as a storage device, because sea snakes, they can dive up to 2 hours, right? They can stay inside the water up to 2 hours. So if they are gonna, the highest record of diving of a sea snake is 238 meters. That's like inside the twilight zone where the sunlight don't reach, right? 238 meters is like really, really deep water. So if it's not going to be a practical thing if they are going to deep down that much, and if they're going to come up for oxygen like within 10 minutes or 30 minutes. So the adaptation that they do possess is having a single lung which they can store oxygen inside, right? So they do take a deep breath. Part of that oxygen is stored inside the succular lung. Part is directly absorbed, and the part and yes, within the tracheal lung area also, it can facilitate slow absorption because it's less vascularized compared to the succular portion, right? So this is the internal structure. We did postmortems, and we did some histopathological studies to find out whether these snakes drowned themselves, or whether these is there anything that we can use to find the cause of mortality for these snakes. Because in Sri Lanka, we don't have any research done when it comes to this aspect. But in other countries, like in sea turtles, they use the internal histopathological structure of sea turtles to decide the cause of their mortality, right? So we were trying to find that as well. And we did the gut and other examinations. So we were able to find out their diet. It's already there, but we were like trying to do a full post-mortem examination. So during that, we encountered some parasitic infections as well. So here we, for the first time in Sri Lanka, we encountered tubovascular laticudae, a trematode from sea snakes, and also Hamartrema species, Hamartrema laticudae and Hamartrema indica from sea snakes. So these are like trematodes living inside the gut. Their harm is very benign because we wanted to see whether these parasites cause any threat, or is there a connection between the deaths of these snakes and between the parasites as well, right? So there's a this is an egg of this trematode. So when it comes to sea snake importance, the parasitic diversity is also very important, because I'll discuss in the future in other slides. So just keep this in mind, right? Okay. And also we came across with other epibionts or any other species that we don't consider them as parasites, but they do live within the sea snake. So this is Platylephis ophiophilus, or sea snake barnacle. So they are like filter feeding barnacles. What they do is like they attach themselves to these sea snakes, and they travel with these sea snakes, right? So sea snakes, they do shed their skin as other terrestrial species. So time to time they try to shed their skin, like by uh, tying up knots or like coiling around their bodies to facilitate the shedding process. So when there's a barnacle, they try to rub their bodies against a hard structure like a coral or a rock. So forceful removal can cause some discomfort or a lesion. This is a lesion that has caused due to that kind of a forceful removal. So we were doing some pathological examinations and like trying to find out what's happening there as well, right? So these images I got from Sanjay and his name, Sanojaya, right? So this is something that I always wanted to highlight, right? So when it comes to sea snake or marine snake conservation, the number one challenge is coming with the mortalities associated with fishing activities, right? In Sri Lanka, in some researchers have highlighted that in some areas like Puttalam, mortality of Acrophotis granulatus per day is like 100 snakes per day. Like that's an insane number, right? So these images are from Jaffna, as Sanjay said. So you can see like how these snakes are like tightly entangled in these meshes, right? And in some fish and hook and line fishery methods as well. So this is the major threat that these snakes face within Sri Lankan waters. So according to researchers, like very latest data, uh, incidental bycatch and post-release mortality is up to 40%. So when it comes to the snakes that we collected, 100% mortality was recorded from hook and line fishery, and nearly 80% mortality rate was there for like mesh or like fishing net associated fisheries activities, right? So which is a insane amount. And the bad thing is like most of these deaths occurred within 24 hours, and the rest after 48 hours, that is after 2 days, because the trauma, the post-release stress, and the damage that the fisherman cause, or the damage that anyone can cause during this removal process, is very bad, right? So according to our observations, I would say like the mortality rate is like nearly 100% within 2 days, right? So there's a point that we have to think about these actions, because most of the snakes that we collected, or like most of the dead or moribund snakes that we collected during the study period, they are gravid, right? All these females, they were gravid, and most of the males, they were in active reproductive status. So, and we try to find out why these gravid snakes are there, but because if these marine snakes, they reproduce during a specific season, right? So according to data, they during August to September hydrophyschistoses, they have active reproductive period, right? So what if all these snakes are dying, the ones who are trying to come to like, right? So the real scenario, the point that I wanted to emphasize was all these females are gravid, right? As I said, so these gravid females, they come to shallow waters to give birth to their young, right? That's because these small youngsters, they can't dive within a very deep water column. So what the females do is like they come and try to give birth within a shallow area. But the sad thing is like all our fishery activities, they lay their nets, they do their fishing activities within this shallow area. So the ones who are trying to give birth, or the ones who are trying to mate, the ones who are trying to facilitate their gravid bodies, because if the female is gravid, they can't swim very fast, they can't dive very deep, and diving deep if a female is a gravid and heavily gravid, and if she's gonna dive to a greater depth, it can cause some difficulties for the youngsters as well. So what the gravid females try to do is like they're going to stick to in these shallow areas, right? So all the fishing activities are happening in these shallow areas. So this is the bad thing when it comes to conservation. This is the bad thing when it comes to the population of these species, right? All these species that are occurring around the world. So when it comes to data availability, it's really, really bad, because according to IUCN, the last update of the sea snake specialist group, they declared that nearly 1/3 of the sea snakes or the marine snake species are under data deficiency category. So we don't know their active reproductive status. We don't know what's happening with their population. We don't know whether they are within any critically endangered, or vulnerable uh, group, because we don't have much of the data to assess these things. So without unnoticing, every day nearly hundreds and hundreds of snakes, sea snakes or marine snakes, they get entangled and they die within our waters as well as around other parts of the world, right? So these are some images that we took, and you can see this one is hydrofish ornatus. I collected this specimen from Mount Lavinia. It was like a very fine one, and I thought like maybe I can release it, but unfortunately after some time it started hemorrhaging, right? Because there was an internal damage. So unfortunately it died, and yeah, it was a gravid female, right? So these are from some around the island, like in Nayaru and other places. You can see how badly this species has been like entangled, and you can see like these nylons, they cause like very fine cuts, and yeah, the chances of releasing a snake after this kind of a heavy entangle means like very, very rare, right? So these are some images that I took during the post-mortem. You can see the internal hemorrhaging, because whenever the fishermen see a snake, what they do is like they just try to squash it. They just try to hit the snake and just kill it, and try to, or maybe like try to deactivate, or maybe like allow it to stay there dehydrated, and just cut the line, or the try to remove the snake with the mesh piece together, right? So this is very bad. So yeah. So when it comes to the importance and research gaps, whenever we try to explain this to fishermen, like the fishers, they were asking like, why? What's the importance? So that's why we should focus our research activities around these less studied species, right? Because it's always not suitable to think about like this usage. It's about the balance, right? So whenever we talk about like population dynamics, whenever we are talking about conservation of fish stocks, people can feel like, okay, if we conserve these fisheries stocks, we can harvest them in the future. But when it comes to conserving these less studied uh, snakes or serpents that most of the people consider as gross, or like try to disregard as like species or group of animals that don't have any value, it's very difficult, right? But sea snakes or marine snakes are considered as a predator. They act as a predator as well as a prey for like species, for like groups like carnivore groups like sharks. These marine snakes, they are prey item. But for other animals like fishes and other fish eggs and many other species, marine snakes are considered as predators. So they do help to maintain the delicate balance of every ecosystem, right? And also sometimes, not sometimes, for some parasitic species like some invertebrate species like the ones that we talked, trematodes or nematodes or any other barnacles, these marine snakes act as a mode of transportation, act as a mode of host. For example, this Hamotrema indica, they infect these fishes, like burrowing fishes, and let these fishes to be eaten by marine snakes. And that's how they're going to complete their life cycle. So anyone can argue that parasites are like, they are, why we have to conserve or think about these parasites, but there are essential links of ecosystem. They are the connecting dots. They are the ones who transform these energy from trophic levels to another trophic level. So this connection, this is a connection that we have to always try to protect, right? So if the sea snake is not in the picture, then the ecosystem will collapse very soon. So it's really important to conserve these species who really act as a kind of a keystone species within an ecosystem, right? And as I said, they do possess special interactions with other organisms, and most importantly, they are venom. They have like multiple properties to cure diseases. For example, they have cancer healing properties. There are research that have been done, and there are researchers who are doing research on the venom properties. For example, in Australia, they have huge research facilities. They primarily focus on finding medicine for certain cancer types. So they use marine snake venom for these novel drug discoveries, and also and many other novel discoveries, right? So this is something that we can use to highlight the importance for common people, right? And they don't have much of data when it comes to reproduction, their behavior, the ecology. For example, all the published information tells us the clutch size, the active reproductive status of different different species, right? But during our research, we found that some species that they do possess some other seasonalities when it comes to reproduction. So still we don't know much about these species, what is the composition, what is the active reproductive status, the period, the season. So we have to, there's plenty of opportunities for anyone who's like interested in when it comes to marine snakes, right? And another important thing is about conducting awareness sessions, because these species, this group of animals, they interact every day with the fisher folks, right? Fishermen. So they don't have much of a understanding about what's happening there. So for example, if there's an entangled sea snake or a marine snake, what simply they do is like just they cut off the that part of the net and just do their work, just throwing out the snake to the water with the net, right? But we found some old fishermen, what they do is like they hold the snake from the head and try to release it. So this is some kind of a knowledge gap that's happening there, because younger generation, they are not very much interested in releasing these animals, or like thinking about the greater good of these species. But the older ones, they have been using that maturity, they have been using that knowledge to release these species. So this is something that younger generation like us can change, right? The ones, if someone is like really interested in conducting why this is happening, why this is happening, what is the reason for the different perspective between all the people and the young fisher folks. So it's a good area, and we can find solutions for these things as well. And also when it comes to fisheries management in Sri Lanka, we don't actually use fisheries management except for like other marine mammals and marine reptiles, like the sea turtles. We don't talk about fisheries management when it comes to sea snakes, right? But this is something that other countries have been talking for a long time, right? So, for example, in Thailand and Vietnam, they do harvest these marine snakes for their meat, venom, and skin, right? So they were doing it according to their existing laws. But when it comes to the law of the sea, United Nations law of the sea, so these animals, when it comes to high seas, these animals falls in the high seas treaty. So the Thailand, Vietnam, they had to incorporate their national laws and existing international laws to regulate this fishery, right? This harvesting. So currently, I would say this is some kind of a managed one. Plus, there are like loopholes in the management strategy. But when it comes to these species, there are countries that they consider them as a fishery resource as well, right? So when you're talking about the way forward, the best suggestion is to declare marine protected areas, right? So if we are going to talk about these creatures only, or most of the time people, or the resource using people, they're going to tell like, okay, what's the point of like protecting marine snakes? So the explanation is very hard. Making them understand, it's going to be a hard thing. So the best option is like blanket protections. Like we are going to declare this whole area as a protected area. So in that protected area, we are going to help all these creatures, all these species to survive. So then they are going to maintain the balance. They are going to be the predator. They are going to be the prey. They are going to support all the other mutually benefiting species, the ones who are living within them, the ones who are passing them as a host. For example, there are like species of parasites or trematodes that infect marine snakes, and the prime objective of infecting marine snake is to end up in a shark eventually, because sharks, they do consume marine snakes. For example, cestodes, they use marine snakes as a intermediate host. So at the end of the day, after infecting the sea snake, shark is gonna eat the sea snake, and the cestoid is going to complete the life cycle within the shark. So this is a very delicate system, right? So BRDs, this is something about excluding devices. For example, they in Australia, the troll fishery, they calculated that sea snake mortalities are really high, so they wanted to introduce some excluding devices for sea snakes and sea turtles as well. So they implemented this as a pilot project, and the mortality rate was like something around 86% or something like that, nearly 80%. So now it has reduced up to 40%. Still, the mortality is high, but it is much better than it was before, right? So including devices is something that someone can introduce for Asian region, or for areas with high bycatch mortalities, right? This is something really new to Sri Lanka, because when it comes to Mannar down south, we do see large number of sea turtles getting entangled within these beach seines and other fishing nets. So this is something that we can implement in the future, right? And modification to fishing gears is another thing that some other countries practice, especially in Indonesia and Australia, because Indonesia, since it's an archipelagic nation, they do have a lot of marine snake diversity. So they have they have implemented fishing gear modification system in Australia as well. They do have fish eye method, a special way of like introducing a small device or a modification known as fish eye modification. So that allow all these marine reptiles and other species to safely bypass these fishing gears, right? So this is something that we can think when it comes to conservation and strengthening the law. In Sri Lanka, all these marine snakes, all 18 species are protected. But is it really, really happening there, right? This is something that we should think about, because having that in black and white paper is not going to do anything, right? Strengthening means we have to think about like naming species, or maybe like trying to do something like trying to push for a better implementation techniques and including them in fisheries law as well. Because for example, flora and fauna protection ordinance is the main thing that when it comes to fauna protection. But sharks, when it comes to marine environment, sharks, we don't have any named shark under FFPO. But Fisheries and Aquatic Resources Act, we have 5 species of protected sharks. So it's happening, but slow, right? So this is something that we can incorporate for Fisheries Act as well, including these reptiles as protected species, or letting fishermen to know that catching these or like laying nets during these seasons is illegal, or like you have obligation to release these animals if you come across with this species or something like that. It should be very, very tactical, and it should be very novel, because these are like venomous ones. So we can't just simply ask fishermen to just use their bare hands to catch these snakes and release them. So there should be a way of like managing these things. One of the best thing is like protected areas, declaring protected areas, and also to implement closed season. So if we can find out the breeding season, or if we can find out the active reproductive status of certain species that are considered as like endangered, or like in the higher level of IUCN conservation status, we can implement closures. For example, the closures that we have for lobsters, within that period, you're not allowed to use this kind of fishing gears, this kind of nets. So by that way, we are ensuring that another population is released safely to the environment. So to do all these things, what we need is like to do more research, right? So the main thing is doing more research. So it may be about implementation of marine protected areas, excluding devices, modifications to fishing gears, or maybe addressing the loopholes in the law, right? So to address any of these points, the number one is the research. So I invite you all to try to do some sort of a intervention or some sort of a research or a way through to these kind of scantily studied areas, right? So yes, the strength when it comes to conservation, it's really difficult to species like sea snakes and other invertebrates, but that's the truth, because we all consider Great Barrier Reef to be one of the highest biologically diverse area, but nearly 30% of that biological diversity comes from invertebrates. Nearly some huge proportion comes from invertebrates, which we don't have any data when it comes to Sri Lanka. So now it's our time to think about this species that we didn't consider for the last couple of last decades, right? So for example, the parasitic diversity, for example, the other crustacean diversity, for example, the species like marine snakes. So if we are able to do more research and try to incorporate them to these biological documents such as Red List or any other national documents that we are compiling at the end of the year or between a couple of years, the only way of like making a sound or making them aware that these are species that we have within our waters is the only way to protect them, right? So yes, this is something that we have to focus during the next couple of years. So I invite you all to think outside the box and try to engage in research when it about all these less studied species like marine snakes, invertebrates, and other marine creatures, right? So this is the story that I wanted to share. This is the problem that I wanted to bring forward. So let's have a right, great. So I'm gonna end my slide share, so and we can have a chat, we can have an interactive session, right? So right, feel free to ask any questions. And already we have like 2 questions here. Also there should be a, all right, is Lasal, is this the whole question, or do we have, or am I missing something? Also there should be,
yeah, I think Shakila,
the
right?
complete question.
Shakila has said in the chat there should be methodologies implemented to prevent removal of native beach vegetation. That is an area where less attention is given. Yeah, I think that's that's the whole message. Yes, I can see. Yeah.
Okay, yes, Shakila. Some marine snakes, they do use these marine vegetations like the Cerebrus ranchus and other ones who are returning back to the land. But when it comes to other species, specifically these hermit crabs and other invertebrates, they use this marine vegetation. So, for example, if you can refer the environmental impact assessment comments given by the Sri Lanka SLSEA for this wind farm thing, they haven't considered much of these things, right? So these are things that we have to think outside the box. We have to think this is a connected environment. Everything is interconnected. If we remove one thing, and it's not gonna give a very rapid or a sudden decline of, or it's not gonna give us a very rapid or a sudden effect, but it's gonna cause a long-term problem, right? So for example, if you're gonna remove the sea snake, then there's a research paper by Dr. Ruchira Somavira about the decline of sea snakes in Ashmore Reef in Timor Sea. So they are trying to find out why the sea snake population has declined. So they're coming with certain types of hypotheses, like thing points that they suspect that may have caused this decline. So one thing is like the population of sharks, right? So, and another thing is like the pathological infections, like parasitic infections, right? So at the end, it's like the overall health of the reef is like declining because the sea snake is not there. So that's how we have to see about all these. We have to think, or we have to regard these animals as major or important part of the ecosystem, right? So yes, these are the things that we have been disregarded for a long time, and these are the things that new generation, like the ones like you all, have to focus. What types of marine species do sea snake eat? Are fishing snake considered dangerous to divers, and are there any cases of sea snake attack records? Mudita. Yes, since since Mudita is a very passionate diver when it comes to removal of ghost nets and things, I know like this is something that I also had in my mind when I'm diving every time. But the sea snakes, they are considered as very skimmish, or like very shy creatures, but they can be aggressive during some events, for example during mating seasons, right? If a female sea snake is like swimming around you, and if she's in a active reproductive status, she's gonna release certain kind of chemicals like pheromones, right? So males can attract, for example, there's a research done. A scientist tried to collect a sea snake, female sea snake, and got to know that the animal is in active reproductive status. So what he did was like he wrapped that snake around a rope and allowed the snake to uh, swim near the rope, or like to engage with the rope for a while, and he released the female, and he used that rope with he tried to lure down males using that rope. So surprisingly, males were coming towards that rope. So that's the way that the pheromones work, right? So we have to be always diver aware when it comes to these creatures. Like you can see like these snakes, they never come behind you, they never uh, chase you down to the boat again, back to the boat. But there may be some instances, but so far when it comes to like secrets, we don't have any bites. When it comes to sea snakes, we don't have much of the bites. All the envenomations that have been recorded in Sri Lanka is from fisheries related bites. There are the bites that happened so far is for the fishermen, right? Because they are the ones who engage with this species, and they are the ones who try to harm or like to release or do something with these snakes. So whenever they are entangled, they try to bite the net, they try to bite whatever comes towards them, right? So unless we are provoking them, unless we are trying to invade their comfort zone, they are very cool, they are not going to do anything, right? So yeah, definitely we don't have to worry about it. If you come across with a snake, that I just wanted to, if you can share that video that you took last dive during the last dive in Colombo area, it would be really nice, because a lot of sea snakes, that's the first time that I saw them around, like swimming around that reef area. So it would be really nice and detail. And what types of marine species do sea snake eat? Yeah, so when it comes to sea snakes or marine snakes, we can categorize them. Like there are generalists, the ones like eat any species of fish, like bobbies, eels, uh, all other sardines and stuff like that. But there are like specialized ones like Emetocephalus, or like in Sinhala we call them as Kudahis muhudunaya, the ones with the very small, very narrow heads. They do eat burrowing eels, the fishes, like the sweepers, the burrowing eels, because they have adapted a very tiny head, where they can go inside the crevices and catch these burrowing animals, right? But when it comes to Hydrophyschistoses, when it comes to other Hydrophis spiralis, Cynosinectors, Ornatus, they are considered as generalists. They do eat all these smaller fish species like gobies, Emlectidae ones, and all these species. But the yellow-bellied sea snake, we consider them as a pelagic species where they float on the surface, and they do practice a feeding pattern we call as nook and cray. What they do is like they're gonna sit there on the surface and allow the small fishes to come near to the sea snake, and he's gonna like lurk. He's gonna go down and collect these small fishes, right? So that's the thing. We do have like nearly 70 species of sea snakes, true sea snakes, and they have evolved in different evolution. They have evolved in different eras, and they do possess different evolutionary patterns, and they do have different adaptations, right? But in Sri Lanka, we do have like several species, and in some species like Ematocephalus and the ones in Australia, they have specific feeding patterns, like they're eating only fish eggs, right? So yes, for most of the time, it's the ones that we encountered are like eels, gobies, and small other, I can't remember the name, but in Sinhala we call them as Diahuna, rock skippers, right? So these are the ones that we encountered, and there's a only rare case where Dr. Kanish Kukwel and his team reported a mollusk digestion from a sea snake. So yeah. All right. Any questions?
Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask. Or maybe you can send them in the chat. In the meantime, we have a feedback form for today's session. So we'll really like to know your ideas on the session. So please take a moment to fill that one as well. And also you can join the GYBN WhatsApp group through the link that we have shared in the chat as well. Mm.
Lasal, do you have any questions?
Actually, I was thinking on some questions from time to time, but eventually you ended up answering all the questions I had.
So it's difficult to make it understand when it comes to some technical stuff, but I don't know whether y'all got it, but I try to simplify this as much as possible. I tried my best to not to include any deep taxonomic things or any other technical stuff that may confuse, but I feel like maybe did I miss anything? Ishadi, maybe I should like join one of your sessions about like science communication, right?
Oh my God. It was amazing. Like, yeah, I think I'm coming from a very non-biology background, so
All right.
I think that.
Yeah, because I was like moving these slides and try to make it more picturesque and remove all this deep science stuff. but I felt like maybe I should keep them and like tell these are not like the taxonomic what do you
No,
call
I think
this?
it's, yeah,
Trees.
I know it's very hard to kind of simplify sometimes. Even we find it hard to simplify policy things. So yeah, I can understand that. But yeah, I get scared when it's about blood. Lasal yeah, Lasal was teasing me why this issue is going on. Yeah.
Right. Seems like we don't have any.
We have kind of, yeah, I
Yes.
have a question. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? I haven't received any through the chat.
Um, can I ask something?
Yeah, sure.
Yep, why not?
Okay. Yeah. So so you said that the marine protected areas is it's one of the best ways to kind of protect these species. So do you think like there are other other ways or like other than that? And also like how about the community's participation in kind of protecting these? You touched upon like how the fisheries community and all, but can you elaborate a little more about that if
Hmm.
possible?
So far, my best suggestion is about seasonal closures and uh, like declaring protected areas, right? Because I'm a now my area of research is about invertebrate biology or maybe like parasitology. So when it comes to making it understand to general public why we should protect, why we should focus on these areas, it's really difficult, right? But when it comes to like some other charismatic species like a sea turtle or a mammal, marine mammal, it's somewhat easy for us to communicate it, right? But I would say for species like these ones, like marine snakes and other invertebrates, best would be like declaring marine protected areas and giving them a blanket protection. Who like we have already given the due protection through the legal system, but the implementation is lacking. We have enough capacity to do any declarations when it comes to marine protected areas. There are organizations, there are people who engage, and there are people who already have suggested the government that these are the areas that we have like high level of biodiversity. These are the areas that need much of the protection. These are the areas that do have a terrestrial protected area component, but these are the areas that we don't have any adjacent uh, protected area declaration like in other major protected area, terrestrial protected area sites. So these are simple things that the government can do. For example, the shark ban or the protection the, given to 5 species of shark. It's through a direct order from the minister itself. Like, but we can do similar things to other disregarded species as well, right? So rather than trying to implement excluding devices or any other high-ended thing, I would say like implementing closures and declaring protected areas is a really good thing. But like when I was doing the data collection back in 2021, 22, and early stages of 2023, there was a troll fishery happening in Battalangundu and Mana area, where I collected a huge number of marine snakes from that troll fishery. It's a bottom troll, right? The Nara, they have said to release the snakes, release the sea snakes, and there are some boats that are doing, some not, some they don't do it, right? But when now it has stopped due to a court order. But when it comes to Gurunagar and Jaffna area, still the bottom trawling is happening, right? So it's difficult to make it understand that this is destroying the environment, or this is causing a major damage, rather than the few species of like crustaceans or the cephalopods that we collect through these trawls. But if we can declare some sort of a umbrella protection for these less studies, less regarded species, yes, it is highly effective. But in countries like in developed countries like in Australia, they have implemented these excluding devices and stuff like that. But I would say, like, from my experience, I have seen how they monitor, how they go behind all these things. But in Sri Lanka, it's not happening. For example, I'm going to these harbors every day for like, I was doing this for like 1 month or something like that after returning from Australia. So I can see illegal sharks, I can see illegal cephalopods species every day in the market. The law is there, the implementation is not there. So rather than just trying to uh, give some sort of a new law, declaring it like protected with this blanket protection would be fine, at least for now, because we have to rethink about the implementation later. So first thing is that we have to act on something, and then only we have to think about what to do. So it is very, very difficult when it comes to marine environment, because people don't see them as like the way they see a tiger shark is different from what they see from a tiger, real tiger, terrestrial tiger. The problem is like they do consider tigers as like very charismatic, very nice, very majestic creatures. But when it comes to tiger shark, these fisher folk, they see them as a potential source of income. So the the thinking pattern, that's something that we have to change. Maybe like people like you, Ashadi, like you are doing some sort of a work to trying to educate these youngsters. If you can extend this to the fisher community, the young children of these fisher communities, it's the area that's really lacking there. Like giving the give regard to these animals. Like yesterday, I saw a video of a huge oceanic manta dragging out of the sea live, and like they are gonna like just slaughter it. But it's in Sinhala they call it as alimadua, right? It's like a huge elephant. They are regarding elephant as a very nice, majestic one, but not these creatures. So they don't get much. They don't do much with their meat, but they do just slaughter it, right? So this is the point that we have to rethink about the education system. We're thinking about rethink about the awareness sessions that we conduct. This is the place that we have to think like taking the findings back to the original place that we collected the data. So yes, it is something that we can do, right? I would suggest awareness sessions, blanket protections, and closures, seasonal closures. They can hold up to some time, but we have to think about the next generation. And when it comes to the next question that you asked is about the awareness and the thinking pattern of these old and young, right? Is it something like that, right, Shadi?
Yeah, it was like the community's engagement in this that I asked. Like you explain, I mean, also like, but if you can elaborate.
Yeah,
But I think you
because
gave the answer. Yeah, I think you answered that.
yes, because it's just really hard to make it understand. Like these are like important creatures. Like I contacted all these fishers through Facebook, and I was like asking them like, are you do you all come across with sea snakes? They were like, oh yeah, yeah, we every day we are coming across this. And I was like, what are you doing with this? They were like, oh, just nothing, just we let them be there till they die, or just smash them, or like just kill them on the spot. So which is very unfortunate. But we saw some fishers trying to release them in Jaffna and some other Mullative areas. But I would say like the post-mortem, the post stress, definitely they're gonna kill it. But it's a very tricky thing, awareness, giving awareness, community engagement, using these communities to do something better. For example, like when it comes to terrestrial snakes, now we have like Sarpa Rakshakyo, all these groups, they are like huddled together to protect these terrestrial species, right? But how about like maybe, I don't know how, up to what extent this is something that possible, but maybe like educating these youth to kind of like handle these species maybe, or like to educate them about the importance and something like that. So it is very tricky when it comes to resource usage and the conservation, but just it's up to us to get together, and the researchers and the educators and other conservations and the competent authorities to come together to a common place and try to do something which is practical. Very hard, but it's a must do. Is okay. Hi, Tilina. Is there any behavioral and
Thank you
social
so much.
dynamics? Is there any behavioral and social dynamics found in sea snakes? Behavioral and social dynamics. All right. Okay. There are behavioral patterns observed throughout the world, like in courtship behaviors specifically. Likewise, I said like the females, they come towards the shallow areas when the breeding season is on, and the males, they do have courtship behavior. They are following the females the throughout the water column with the pheromonal scent, and they do exhibit certain type of courtship behaviors. Like in sea turtles, they do have a specific way of like dancing, coiling up, mating, some sort of things like that. But we don't have much of the data to tell whether like is these things are these things very common, are there any interspecific variations or something like that, because still we don't have much information about their biology even. So that's the problem. So yeah, there are records time to time, but very lacking. Social dynamics, we have seen huge aggregations, they are coming together, but in order to, we don't I don't think we do have much of the data to tell whether this is a social status, this is a social gathering or something like that, like in other mammals or highly studied species. Yeah, but huge aggregations have been seen. Even the observations are very, what do you call, ad hoc. For example, until recently, people were thinking like how these sea snakes drink fresh water because they are not returning to the land, right? So then only a researcher got research observed that if there's a rain happening in a part of the ocean, somehow these snakes can feel it, right? Maybe through the vibration. So they tend to go to that area and they try to open their mouth and get a good freshwater input, or maybe they are even after the rain, they try to drink that surface seawater, which the salinity has been dropped to a considerable level, because while mixing, the salinity goes down, so the sea snakes comes there and they try to drink it. So these are like very simple things, but still they are like very new to science. So it's too early to tell like whether we have these social structures, whether we have all these other behavioral patterns within the species or between the species or within the same populations. Very difficult. For example, the parasitic community that we encountered in Mullaitivu area is different genetically to the ones that we encountered in Mana area. So what does this tell? Like they are not going around the island. They are like the population is fragmented, the population is restricted to their own path, because if the parasite is same, we can assume that this is the snake is like going all through the throughout the Mana, Jaffna, and to the Mullaitivu area, but it's not. To make the parasite community living inside the sea snake to be genetically different, they never crossed their path. So these are like hypotheses. Still, we are doing research on it, but the populations, they never mix, it seems, with the data that we have. So they may have some sort of a social structure or a behavioral pattern that they do adapt and possessed separately, individually within their population. So still very new to science. Hope I gave a bit of a understanding for your question, bit of a answer to your question, Naveen.
Yeah, I think you gave a clear explanation on that question as well. Just as we were talking about the uh, protected areas and all the uh, legislative approaches, are you aware of any talks going on at the moment in that institutional level regarding these remedies that we spoke of?
Good question. Time to time, they do initiate activities to expand the protective way. You mean in Sri Lanka, right?
Yes.
Time to time, I have seen like a couple of times they are asking experts or the researchers to join. Time to time, they are getting inputs from the people who are actively working in these areas, but still the result is very low. Like we haven't seen it. Like fisheries management zones, marine protected areas, and no take zones. These are the things that we have suggested. That these are the things that the international community has been suggested. We have like signed all the treaties that we are obligated to do so. But still, I would say from what I have seen, everything depends upon the politics. Like for example, the ban on Kepalopolis sonorati, Ranthambua fishery, right? So this is very political. If you go to the fishery market early in the morning, you can see like large numbers of Kepalopolis lying down the market, right? But it's protected, but it's not happening. Right? The same thing happens to the protected area thing. The the experts, they have given their inputs. The people who are working in these institutions, they have gathered around. They have made the discussions. They have tabled it, but the implementation is not happening. I don't know. I have seen like several times there have been discussions, but still the output, there's no output. So yeah, maybe like if you can, if you have ever read that Dr. Asha Divorce paper, Dr. Asha Divorce and Nishan Pereira, they wrote a paper in 2013 or something, somewhere about the marine protected areas of Sri Lanka, right? So you can see the suggestions that they made, the existing loopholes. They have regarded the marine protected areas as paper parks. So still nothing is happening. I don't know, Lasal, but still they would say the discussions are ongoing, but it's ongoing for a long time, I would say.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's something we have been discussing and working in GYBN as well. Like, we see a lot of discussions coming up from time to time, but when it comes to actually implementing and also monitoring in long scale. So we have problems in many areas. So yeah, I think I mean, at least the we keep bringing up the questions is important until some solution comes up, right? So yeah. So do we have any other questions from our participants? Or maybe we can wrap up for the day.
Yes, Shadi. Yeah, that's good.
Audible?
Yes, yes, you
Hi.
are.
Yeah, I have a question just for my enthusiasm, right? Uh, like fishes have wings, but sea snakes don't have wings. So how they can get the force for swim through the ocean?
Uh, Sorry, Ravidu, I didn't get your question.
So I
No,
think
uh,
yeah.
yeah, I just uh, fishes have wings. Fishes, uh,
Yes, I think what he's asking is like how these sea snakes get the force to swim in ocean without structures like fins and all.
Ah, right, the fins. I was like thinking like
yeah,
wings. All right, sorry,
no,
sorry.
no, wings, not
My
wings.
bad. Yes, my bad, Ravidu, my bad. So the anatomy of the sea snake is very unique, right? They have like a flattened body. They have a very long, extended neural arch, which allow the body to be very flat, right? And the muscle structure allow the snake to propel to get the energy from the tail in a very very efficient way, right? And the way their bodies have developed, the head, if you can see the head of a diving like in species like deep diving species, they're like pointed like streamlined body, right? And the keels on their bodies, they have the ability to withstand the pressure, and they have the ability to dive or like cut through the water column. So fishes, they use fins and the power of the caudal peduncle or the caudal tail, right? Caudal fin. But when it comes to snakes, they propel their bodies, and with the power of their flattened tail, they use it as a rudder, like in the boat. For example, long ships, they do have a small rudder, right? So they can make their direction and they can speed up, right? But snakes, they can they what they do is like they have the energy, they have a huge expandable lung that they can store energy, which the oxygen is going to give fuel up them. So yes, that's how they use. The main thing is their tail. Like they can very very freely, very very strongly, they can use their body to cut through the water column and like deep dive, and like they can move sudden movements. It's very flexible as well as very rigid when they want, when they want to make it rigid. So yeah, like if you
And
have
also,
the
I have another question.
yes, Ravidu.
Hello. Yeah.
Yes.
So how is their iron balancing?
Just so they do ingest large amount of seawater every day. They have a lacrimal gland situated below their tongue to remove the excess salt, like in other marine turtles. They have sea turtles. They have these salt excreting glands. Sorry, not lacrimal. sea turtles, they have the lacrimal gland. Sorry, the salt secreting gland near the lacrimal area, but when it comes to sea snakes and other marine snakes, they have it in the sublingual, that is below their tongue. So they balance their salt using this salt excretion glands, and from the excretion as well.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Right. I should have included that. I totally forgot that.
Maybe we can talk about the physiology on another day as well.
Yes. When it comes to the biology, anatomy, you can keep on talking. But when it comes to conservation and turning this research to something more effective and conservative, practical, it's very difficult. Like we have to think a lot. We have to come together, discuss. That's why I told that this should be a discussion session. Like, why not?
Yeah, unfortunately, we are kind of limited with the time that we can allocate. So, yeah, we, have to focus on the most pressing matters sometimes.
We should get together and try to discuss something sometime together.
Surely.
Right, Asha?
Yeah. Right.
All right. So since we don't have any questions, maybe.
Yep. Yes. So yeah, I think yeah, it's getting close to 9 p.m. at the moment. So yes, I think we should wrap up for the day. Once again, reminding we have sent the feedback form for today's session in the chat box. So please take a couple of minutes to fill that one, and also you can join the GYBN WhatsApp group through the link that we have included in the chat. And also we have the GYBN membership form in the chat box. So if you are interested in joining us in GYBN Sri Lanka, you can fill that form. We are open for new members at the moment. So you will be able to join with many more exciting things to come and work with us. So once again, so it was a really, really exciting and an enjoyable session with you, Lenin. So thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and taking your time to be with us.
For having me.
And thank you everybody for joining with us today. So yeah, I think we had a really valuable couple of hours here. So yep, I think we are good to go. So until we meet you next time, take care. Goodbye.
See you guys. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.
Yeah, good night.